Now we're going to be talking about collision avoidance and, collision detection. One of the challenges of having a network is that you've got all of these devices that connect into a centerpiece. This is a hub or a switch. And there's nothing wrong with that, but how do we make sure that two devices aren't talking at the same time so that they're not stomping on each other? Well, to understand how that works, we need to understand something called CSMA CD. Normally, when you have a number of devices on a network, before any one device begins to broadcast out onto the network, it will first listen. And if it can't hear anything on the network, it will then go ahead and send out its packet, which propagates out to all the other devices. However, there are some situations where, even though the device listens, because of the incredibly fast timing, two devices could actually send out data at the same time. When this happens, that's a bad thing because you end up getting a collision. So you've got a choice. Either you can determine that you have collisions and do something about it, or you can avoid collisions altogether. Traditionally, what we do is we detect collisions and deal with it. And that's where CSMA CD comes from. Carrier Sense Multiple Access Collision Detection. So, what will take place is that if this device wants to send something out on the network, it listens. So it's carrier sense, and there's multiple devices on here, and it's multiple access. If it doesn't hear anything, it's going to go ahead and send out its frames. On those rare occasions, which on today's networks should be about 5% of the time, you will end up having situations where you have collisions. In that case, networks handle it very beautifully. Basically, built into every one of these network cards is an electronic set of dice. So imagine a dice with 65,536 sides on it. So the two network cards can detect the collision. It's actually very easy to detect a collision electrically because you get kind of like a voltage spike. We'll leave it like that for now. So that's one nice thing about being on a wired network is it's easy to detect a collision. So they roll their dice, and whatever that time interval is, that's how long they wait before they resend their data. And that's what Carrier Sense Multiple Access Collision Detection means. The problem we run into is if we have a network that doesn't have any wires. In that case, it's very difficult to detect collisions, so what we have to do is avoid them altogether. And that's where CSMA-CA comes into play. The problem with a wireless network is determining whether there's a collision or not. We don't have a wire that has a surge in voltage or something like that to give us a clue. So what we do in a wireless network is we avoid it altogether. So what we're talking about is the interaction between, in this case, my purple wireless client and my red wireless access point. So in this type of situation, the first thing that happens is a wireless access point listens and tries to hear if there's anything on the network. If it hears anything, it goes into a back-off interval, which is a certain amount of milliseconds that it's going to wait before it attempts to listen again. However, if it listens and it doesn't hear anything, what it'll do is transmit what's known as a request to send. The request to send is a request between the wireless client and the wireless access point to send data. If it doesn't hear back from the wireless access point, it once again goes into a back-off interval. However, if it does hear a clear to send from the wireless access point, it will go ahead and begin transmitting data. I find it interesting that the Network Plus still covers CSMA CD. CSMA CD is kind of old-fashioned because you really need to use only hubs in your network for that to happen. Remember, everything's being broadcast to everybody else in a hub, whereas with a switch, it's really a point-to-point connection between two computers. So it's very, very difficult to get a collision within a switched network. It does happen sometimes with broadcasts, I guess. So make sure you know that CSMA CD is unique to wired networks, in particular Ethernet networks. CSMA-CA, however, is pretty much only used in wireless networks, and it's going to act as an interface between a wireless client like your laptop or your phone or whatever you have, and a wireless access point. And also keep in mind that CSMA-CA works by avoiding collisions, while CSMA-CD works by detecting collisions and dealing with it.